So I wanted to come in today and hold a conversation around action. It's one of my favorite things because when you take a considerable amount of action, uh, it usually negates the thing that probably would have tripped you up originally should you not have taken action. And what I mean by this is we're heading into a world where everyone doubts themselves, everyone questions who they are, and people don't understand that failure is a part of success. And if you don't learn something by figuring out what it's not, then the thing that you're standing on is probably built off a fluke. And is it rebuildable? Is it reusable? And can it be passed on and something built off it that maybe has a different foundation? And so as we kind of come through, I like to reflect and kind of leave little notes so that when I come back and I watch these in my future development stage in 5 or 10 years time to assess the way I communicated, the way I delivered content, where I was at and what I was doing, I like to try and leave little notes. So I'm recording this one today a day after my birthday, and I love it as an opportunity to sit there and look back and say, hey, look, did I achieve the things that I wanted to in the last year? And I sit there and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty content with what I've done. And it's not necessarily something to brag about, but it's something to sit there and pat myself on the back because I took enough action to allow something to happen that put me in a different position than where I was at. And it also allows me to sit there and say, hey, look, did I also learn something that I didn't expect to learn? Because I think one of the key development factors that allow us to contribute towards our own success and our own growth is by constantly doing things and trying to find things that we don't know. And that journey can be something that's really off-putting for people, but within that curiosity sits answers to the things that you don't know. It is completely whole new worlds that could unlock themselves should you figure this thing out. And so one of my biggest curiosities is to take action towards putting me into unknown environments. And so with today's world and technology, we have the ability to basically access any sort of famous person because social media exists. So you might sit there and say, hey, look, I really like this person, and this person. It's like, cool, go and study them. And then outside of that, go and study them and then see who they're connected to. What are the other businesses? What are the things that they do in their day-to-day routine that might look different to yours? And then start to take action on those things and find how they sit in your environment, within your personal life, within your family life, within your business, within your job, whatever it may be. But I think that taking action is something where when your character is developed and you figure out who you are as a person and what you want to stand for and that you're okay to stand for that, failure doesn't matter because other people's opinions outside of what it is that you're trying to figure out kind of becomes irrelevant. And it's one of the things I sit here and I've just turned 31 and I used my approach that my 20s were for learning and I just took so much action. It was coming through and I worked copious amounts of jobs. I worked hours that probably made most people nervous, and I actioned by going and traveling, spending time with people, and constantly trying to develop my network in a way that allowed me to expand. And then I hit 30 and I was like, look, one of my goals is to now shift into building. And in the last year, I've started to build out a gym. I've started working for another company who runs an international ministry, and I lead the development of that, and I work with an amazing team. And all of this process, when you get to manage, allows you to do so much more. And I genuinely sit there, and one of the things that allows me as an up-and-coming leader, inspirational person for what I'm hoping is going to be many generations is I enjoy encouraging other people to step into their job so that they can do more. And it often only takes a little bit of encouragement. And so within that question or statement, as I'm working with other people, I like to try and sit there and be like, look, what are your skills? What are the things that you struggle with the most? Because the moment you bring those into the light, it allows you to start to put a framework to where it is that you need to start with your development. And then you can take action on those things. So as we come through and we start to break apart action, because there's so many different forms of it, Sometimes action is removing yourself from an environment. Sometimes it's putting yourself in a different environment. Sometimes it's surrounding yourself with different people. It might be that you completely change lanes for a moment in time and you step into learning about finances even though you're in this industry, because eventually that's going to lead across. And I want to come and just encourage everyone that's sitting here and watching this, because we are heading into a world where technology is developing at an extremely fast rate. And I was listening to an interview by Elon Musk where he talked around how with technology changing, a lot of jobs are going to be at risk. But the main risk isn't the loss of work, it's the loss of people's identity and based on what they do. And it was such a key thing for me, because so often we are confined to the environment that we build based around our job. And within that job, if you take that away, there's not much that we have left to stand for. And I quite often find that as a man, you sit there and your environment cultivates and is a representation of the sort of person you are. Am I successful? Can I do this? What is it that I do? Am I proud to stand for this? Do I like what it is that I do? And all of these sorts of things. And so one of the things that Jordan Peterson talks about is he talks about how you need to first deal with your own world, then your family, and then the world. Because if you can't be the person that you're meant to be, then one little thing could come along, and if you haven't tested those parameters, then it's going to fail and it's going to fall. And the reason that I'm talking about this to do with health is because this is associated more within the mental health side of things, but it's a hugely important part is learning our character. We've got so many questionable morals and traits within today's world that people seem to stand for just because they're a little bit offended and they're not actually structured off anything other than feeling. And I could offend a lot of people, and that's okay, I don't mind. But at the same time, if I'm not willing to have a conversation based around it, that actually comes down to the why, where that rooted from, where the observations come from, how that's made me feel, who else I see doing that, and why it could or could not be something that's beneficial, then I'm not actually willing to have the conversation, because there's actually no process. It's just a statement that's blanket rule, done and dusted, and there's no conversation. And to take a copious amount of action and then actually step through. I've been listening to one of Grant Cardone's 10X conferences over the last few days, and it's that process that he talks about of taking so much action that if you take 10 steps forward, the one step back isn't going to put you back to ground zero. And I'm like, man, what does it take to get my character to that point where I can take so much action that the thing that would usually or used to previously trip me up has been lost because I've just gotten so much groundwork. And one of the things that the last year has taught me has been how much you can get done when you work with other people. And we're heading into a very individualistic world in Western culture that basically says, hey, look, I want to do this on my own. I want to stand tall. I'm going to be the person that's going to allow me to do this. Whereas actually there's so much more gratification, there's so much more satisfaction, there's so much more reward when you sit and you can internet with people. But you have to be wise about that, and it takes life skills of reading people's character, knowing what questions to ask, surrounding yourself with people that are other doers, because when you are chasing and you're trying to grow, the person who's doing the same thing's never going to pull you down. And that's often quite a good indicator of am I in the right group of people? Because if people are pulling you down, then cut them off, in all honesty, because they're not the sort of people that you want to be around. And there's always an opportunity of redemption, which is a helping hand to sit there and say, hey, this is actually the direction that I'm going. This is the reason why I see it doing this. If you want to come along, you're more than welcome to. But if somebody's not willing to let go of their perception of the world or their current environment that facilitated to make them who they are, then come back in 5 years' time, because then you'll have a track record that'll show them the proof of why you did what you did that then leads to this, and then they might be interested. But you're never going to get from here to here if you don't take the action. And quite often it's a really hard thing, because you sit there and it's like, am I actually willing to let go of everything to get towards this next step? And if I don't have the people that are also walking along this progress line, am I actually okay to then let go of the environment that I'm comfortable in as well? And this is something in today's culture where I look around and I see so many people who don't have genuine nature behind what it is that they're trying to put out. And we're all after money, don't get me wrong. Like, we're all trying to sit there and we want to do well, we want to set up our life, but you can tell the difference between somebody that is chasing money to grow to them better and someone who's chasing money with the root of greed. And I know what sort of people I want to surround myself with. And I'm also not going to sit there and lie, but I want to do the opposite to what most people do, which is to accumulate wealth and hold on to it. And I've really seen the benefits of working with other people, and quite often that comes with a cost of laying your money down and putting your money where your mouth is. And so we have people who live in this restricted life or this false safety net that they get used to because of a safe environment. But the environments that we're quite often around need to be tested, because if you've created one little pathway out of 100 different variables and that one pathway gets struck and you don't have any other 99 pillars to stand on, then have you actually built something that's successful? If you lose your job tomorrow and your world fails and it falls, have you actually built something? Have you been wise enough? And within that environment, we often get a chance to reflect, because we learn so much through our pain points that we don't know what we don't know. And in that process, you can sit there, and if you have the character, then you can take the challenge and you can rebuild. But if you work and you integrate with 9 other people who have those pillars, or 99 other people that have those pillars, then when yours gets shaken, there's other people to stand beside you, and you can share knowledge and you can interact and you can hold each other up. And I think that beautiful part of character, and this is something I am starting to see more of in today's world, is we're starting to see friends that are doing journeys together within what they're interested in. And it's such a beautiful thing, and it's why from later on this year I'll be starting to do podcasts with people, is because then you start to see natural exchange between humans. You start to see, is this person genuine? Can they actually hold a conversation? Are they reading from a script and therefore they've just premeditated what it is that they want to say? And I think that these are the things that as we start to move forward, the value is going to be in the genuine nature of who a person is, and the credibility of their work and the journey that they're on, and then who is it that's around them and what do their friends and family say about them. Because within that nature, I want to sit there and say, look, my friends would probably say I'm a terrible workaholic. They would sit there and say I work too much, but I genuinely have so much that I want to do, and I want to leave a legacy behind that supersedes anything that's been done in my family line before, because I am so curious and I can see the amount of potential that sits within the world, and I want to, simply in the words of Grant Cardone, I want to 10x everything that I do consistently. And it's probably going to take 10 times longer than I expected, which is why I want to come through and consistently do these, because this is me learning how to communicate with you guys, but this is also me learning life skills. Can I explain something clearly and precisely? Because if I can't, then I probably don't know it and I shouldn't be talking about it. And so as we come into the health aspect and we talk about action and we talk about our character and we talk about the environment that we situate ourselves in, it's extremely important for us to be able to sit there and be aware, because it kind of starts with awareness. If you're going to take action towards something, you don't just cook a meal, poof. You have to put pre-thought into what it is that you want to cook, and then you take action to make the meal, because you've got a goal, which is that end point, but the journey is getting from here to that end point. So in your life, when we sit there and I ask you, who do you want to be? What do you want to stand for? What are the things that are limiting you? Quite often those things are really big questions, but it's like, well, are you taking action towards your financial integrity? Are you increasing your emotional intelligence? Are you looking after your health? Do you have good relationships with your family? Have you backed work through your relationships with your family? Because I think quite often we sit there and a lot of people throw hate towards their family, internally, externally, because they feel short done by. But guarantee that you're going to have things that you do that are also going to make your kids feel the same way one day, because we can't do it all. But what we can do is we can work together with one another, and that process allows us to offset some of those weaknesses so that there's an exposure to something else. So if you grow up in a cloistered environment, something that is removed from the rest of the world, then you're not really going to get that chance to sharpen iron against iron where your character gets developed. And I often sit there and I look back through the times within my community where I grew up, and we're talking church, we're talking traveling for work, we're talking martial arts, we're talking the gym environment, we're talking in the jobs that I've worked, university, and all of the different processes that I've been through. And there's always opportunities sitting there in every person that you can converse with, because you learn so much when you hold a conversation. You're getting insight into somebody else's world. Where did they grow up? What happened to their life? What made them them? And how did those things contribute towards them being them? But then also that beautiful crossroad, that's where your two lives meet. And then you add another person into that, and it's like, well, you might have somebody who majors in finance, you might have somebody that majors in this and then this, and then you hold a conversation, and it creates an opportunity that if you took action on it, and each of you took the moments to actually build and flow and grow on what it was that you did, you could be so much further ahead than where you are. And that quite often overwhelms people, and that's why I think taking those 10 small steps rather than trying to take one major leap really leads towards a factor of growth, a factor of development. And it doesn't matter if you have integrity and you don't mind admitting when you fail and holding yourself accountable to the actions that you take. There's the ability to sit there and make those little pivots and make those adjustments along the time in real time while heading for that big goal that you're aiming for. Because I can guarantee that the things that I'm dreaming of now, that in 10 years time when I've learned a whole bunch of new things because I grow yearly, the end goal is going to significantly have shifted, but the direction's still going to be the same. But the process is where the magic happens, because that's where I meet people. That's where I learn about the things that I don't know. I figure more things out about myself. What caused me to trigger? Why was I angry at this person? Why did I love that person? What was it about their character that captivated me? And you have this thing that starts with awareness. And so awareness in health, awareness in relationships, awareness in finance, awareness in the environment you live in and the things and the people that you surround yourself with is so vital towards your growth. And not everyone is going to be as ambitious and driven as me, and that's cool, because it means hopefully at some point I can turn around and offer something back that allows people's lives to be so much more beneficial and allow them to contribute in a two-way relationship as well, because we work together. And that's why I think it's so important to figure out our character, because if I was the sort of person that sat there and said, hey, look, I'm the be-all, end-all, this is what I'm doing, if you're not on board with it, then bugger off, I would have a lot of work to do. But the thing is I'm going to meet people along the way, and they may have gone through adversities that I didn't even know existed. They may sit there and say, hey, look, after everything that I've been through, I'm so grateful just to have a house and a family that love me, and I want to spend time. And I'm like, cool, you've got somebody that's really stable in a community that you know is going to work really hard. How do I work with them so that I can then better their lives? And in return, we start to co-labor. And within that, you look at community, you look at diversity, you look at cultures, you look at age brackets, you look at nature of people and the things that contribute towards their strengths and their weaknesses. And all of this comes from taking action, because if you don't take action on learning these things, you won't even hold an awareness around the fact that these things happen. And so I sit there, and as I start to go into my 31st year, I really want to start bringing this content out, and I want to start diversifying out around health, around finances, around communication, around emotional intelligence. Start holding conversation that sits there and says, hey, look, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but here's a range of things that you could potentially be aware of, so that as you grow as a person, you learn that it isn't just this one lane that's going to dictate the direction that I go, but there's many opportunities, and depending on what circumstance I take and in which environment I'm in, this could be one of those many factors that contribute towards an outcome being this. And so learn to structure yourself to be moldable. Learn to structure yourself that every day that you wake up, you have the ability to sit there and take it as it comes, because quite often we get so caught in routine, and when that routine gets thrown out, throws our lives. And so can you build yourself strong enough that you can weather the storm that you're in? Because I think one of the greatest skills and one of the rarest assets that we are going to be able to build as the human race in the next 10 years is going to be responsibility. And I know it probably scares the living shit out of everybody, because at some point it gets really heavy. the amount that sits there, the weight of responsibility, and it's a strange weight, but you don't find that the responsibility gets less. You learn to be more capable. And so as you take action and you learn how to handle these things, you often share with other people their skills that they've learned so that you can grow. And then you become a stronger person. You can then influence your family and then the world through that asset and that process that you've learned. Because our mindset is one of the greatest assets that we can hold on to. Because with our mindset, we can see opportunity. With our mindset, we can choose when or we should go or stay. We can choose the people that we surround ourselves with according to the goal and the direction. And so it is generally one of the finest tools that we can use to shape the direction of our future. And that's why I wanted to talk about action today, because in that action, we come in and we can stay in the same mindset, but you're never going to solve a problem or find a solution in the environment that a problem was created. And so you have to put yourself outside that view. It's almost like a bird's eye view on top of a situation so that you can view the surrounding parameters. And if you can't solve it within that, then go broader. Learn more, figure things out. Sometimes you might solve a problem in a day. Sometimes it might be a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years. But you have this invitation of curiosity that if you're willing to figure it out, ask people that you may potentially think have been through something similar. They'll often unlock these things faster, which is why community is so important. And it all comes through from taking action. Ask questions, do things over and over again, test the parameters and have the willingness to sit there and bounce backwards and forward off these things so that you can grow as an individual, not so that you've got something to hold on to, but so that you can grow as an individual to share with other people so that you can raise the community that's around you and then influence the world. And I think some of the greatest things that contribute towards this is our health, our finances, our headspace, and those people that are around us. Because we talked about this, that if any of those fail, then your life becomes really challenging and it's quite difficult. And the dynamic that's associated with learning to steward those well is really difficult as well, because when you have finances, it can be lost. So if you don't tend to it like a garden, it's going to die off and you won't be left with anything. The same thing goes with your relationships. The same thing goes with your nutrition. You don't just get it once and not have to look after it. And so that's when responsibility comes in, is you could build something really phenomenal but not look after it and it falls. It's like dusting. It's like cleaning the house. And so I really just want to encourage you guys that I know this sounds like a lot, but so is writing a book. Like, you don't start at page 1 and then skip to the last page. There's the process that's in between to get to that 2, 3, 4, 500 page book that is beautiful. And I want my life to be the equivalent of a 500 page book. I don't want to be one of those short little stories that's like, hey, look, this one's only 30 or 40 pages. It's a short, brief story, really easy reading. I want something that's going to sit there and take people on a journey that captivates them and say, man, at this point I tripped up and this was the adventure I went on. And people are like, man, we're so in depth in this. And then you walk through this picture and it's like, man, this is what contributed to it. This is what led to it. Here's a journey. Here's a process. These are the people. This is the part of the world. This is the environment. This was the time I was in within the duration of time. Like, man, 1993 to where we're at now has changed so drastically in the last 31 years from what I remember as a kid to where it's at now. And we're heading into an age that's advancing so much faster, more than any other previous age ever has. You look at the technological age, or when they made cars, and the development time from going from horseback to vehicles on the road may have been done over, say, 100, 200 years to go from here to here. What's been done within the technical revolution, where you look at technology, you look at AI, you look at the advancement of cell phones, is this has been done in 20 years. And so what's happening is you've got the fastest revolution of technology, or forced change, that has ever hit the face of the earth, apart from things like natural disasters and all of those sorts of things that contribute towards leaving people feeling anxious. Because is my job going to exist in 5 years? Is probably not really something that ever had to be considered 300 or 400 years ago, because farming was always going to be a man-made thing. There was no job that sat there and said, hey, look, a robot's probably going to come along and do this a little bit better. And so if you're not prepared and you're not okay with change, you're going to end up in a really, really hard situation. And that's why I love listening to other up and coming current professionals or articles that come out contemplating or trying to project the future, because it gives me that awareness to something that I don't yet know. And what's it going to look like when we have thought speed processing that I think it and it's already actioned, because the thought went into a computer, AI triggered the response, and it wrote the code that made the program so I could action the thought. And then you have a 3D printer that can then sit there and say, cool, let's activate this, let's go build this piece. What component? It has an understanding of chemistry, it has an understanding of this. This is the strongest component, that's the most cost effective for this. And you go from concept to idea in the space of a day. And I personally get really excited about that stuff, because you're removing limitations that I'm currently faced with. As it's like, I can't go from here to here because I don't know these people. I haven't got the 200 years worth of study for all of these components of time. But now I have the ability, with the advancement of technology, to sit there and say, well, the amount of action that I can take is simply limited by my imagination. And this is the first time in history that I think we've been at this place from what I can see. And so I want to encourage you guys to be excited, because you could sit there and be the best at the thing that intrigues your life within today's day and age. I am so excited for artists. Like, I went and sat in on a crypto talk a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that they said around blockchain network and NFTs and all of the structure around all of this was saying that, like, what a time to be an artist, because now they're always going to get paid should they jump on this technology, because every time something is a transaction, it honors the original deal and that gets a cut. And so now you have these big money systems that have built these systems that people had to go to, that can be replicated in a way that allows people to get the honor where it's due, the respect. And you're almost forcing old school morals of honor, respect, integrity, communication, this is the value of my word, to stay true, because it can't be broken. It's locked in a line of code that can't be edited or adjusted because of the way that the system works. And if you're not pursuing this stuff, and if you're not aware of it, and there's always going to be people where that's the case, then you're going to end up probably in a situation in 5, 10, 15 years time where it's just going to be so overwhelming, because there's going to be so much to catch up on. And it's the same thing with health. I know that when I work with clients, you sit there and it's like, cool, this is how you move, or this is what we need to do. And it's so much more overwhelming for somebody who walks in who never considered these things before, versus somebody who's just been taking action, trying to figure the stuff out as they go. And then all of a sudden you get the data or the science that's associated with their why, and it clicks, and then they take it and they run, versus a person here who then has to pull everything apart, refine that foundation, build the structure while it also being a part of their day-to-day life, and then build and then move forward. And it's just the journey. Like, there's no problem with how long it takes you to take those steps, as long as you're consistently taking those steps forward. Because we grow up in different environments, we are born into different worlds, we have access to different communities, and there's so many factors that make our lives diverse that you can't ever sit and compare yourself to somebody else. But you can sit there and be inspired by what somebody else does, and try and use that as an anchor for a reality that you can potentially step into, that's going to return something so much more different for your future than what it is that you've currently got. Because if you sit and stay in the exact same place, you're not actually left with the same things, because over a year, if you don't progress, everything else is probably deteriorated, and you're sitting on a platform that's now less stable. And so I always sit there and I'm like, look, there should be areas of growth within your life every year when you look back. And that's why I love using a birthday. I don't use the New Year's resolution. I try and use that as a social time to catch up with friends and family so that I can be present. But I try and use my birthday as a turning point to sit there and say, am I still on track with myself? Am I still the person that I want to be? Have I shown attributes within my character that I should probably look at so that I can then not get caught out by these in the future? Am I surrounded by the right people? Where am I going? How is my health? And all of these things. And what have I learned that I didn't know beforehand? Because I'm genuinely very blessed that I'm in the environment that I'm in, but I've very intentionally created an environment so that I can sit here and learn to communicate to you guys and bring things that you may not have the time to do because you're in a different circumstance than I am. And so that's how community works, and that's how that diversity works, so that we can come in and we can share what it is that we've learned. And I have the luxury to be in a place where I love learning. I love being surrounded by highly intelligent people who are taking action. I love taking action and building things in ways that haven't been done before because times have changed. And then I like sharing that stuff because it might spark interest within a person that changes their life. And if it changes one person's life, then I'm genuinely so stoked to sit there and say that I'm grateful for the year's worth of work that I've done if it sets up one person for a future generation. And I'm still growing, I'm still having fun, and I love the conversations that come from these things as they are passed on, shared about, or challenged as well. Because within those challenges, we sit there, and when you look at psychology, you look at science, you look at nutrition, you look at the diverse nature of how every individual is made. And this is what I love about the quantum physics side of things, is every individual person has their own unique fingerprint essentially within the world that nobody else can replicate. And we are heading into a day and age where there are going to be a lot of deep fakes. There's going to be a lot of probably manipulation or false expectation. And if somebody was to create a deep fake of me and the world believed it, how would I feel in that situation? Because the more successful you are is the more people that are probably going to want to try and pull you down, because people don't like it usually when somebody else makes success, unless they're in that growth mindset and they're sitting there helping other people up. They're going to sit there and say, hey, that person's really greedy, they've got stuff I don't have, I want to bag that person. And that shows a lack of character. And so as you sit there, do you have that awareness to sit there and have the character to handle that? Have the people around you that sit there and say, man, that's definitely not him. We're just going to have to write that off. And that's why your friend group and your community is really important, because I could make AI create a video of me based off this video, because I've put this out on social media, that could create an alternative version of the story that I'm trying to tell. And I would hope that my friends had the character to come and ask me personally, hey, we saw something, we don't know if we agree with it, can we chat about this? Because then that offers an opportunity for me to learn, and it might be like, whoa, there's a deep fake out there of me I didn't know, so many different things. And then my next question would be, well, instead of stopping putting content out, how do I make it so that it's secure? And it's like, cool, well, here's my website, and this is the only place I want you guys to go to get content. So there's all of these progressions that you can make that are associated with who you want to be in the direction that you're going. And it comes from taking action, it comes from the environment that you're in, and you're also going to have to be okay to let things go. And I think that that's one of the hard parts of growing up. As you sit there, the version of you that made a decision at 12 that's carried you for the last 10, 15 years, you probably need to revisit that idea of where that came from, because the rest of you's growing and that thing probably needs to as well. But it's always going to be slightly uncomfortable to have that self-assessment, to realize that it's probably not the best thing for you anymore moving forward. And you want to honor, you want to respect that thing, but it's not serving you any longer. So how do you correctly let that go without burning bridges or doing those sorts of things, so that your character can grow and you can develop? So I just wanted to come to you guys today with that kind of conversation. It's not a super long chat, but it's an encouragement around action. It's an encouragement around observation, and it's an encouragement around taking time to spend 5 minutes a week just in your own space, or use something like your birthday so that you can come through and prepare your mind towards if your reality and your expectation align, or if something needs to change. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope that this is something that, one, gives you a thought to think on, two, allows you to grow as an individual, and consider something that you maybe hadn't thought on as you approach your world. Or I hope that this might help you with the next step so that you can achieve more, because I want to hear about that stuff. I genuinely love it when friends or family have their kids that come up and they're so excited around these ideas or these things or these concepts that they've thought about, and you're like, wow, even I hadn't thought about that. So you just never know what these conversations are going to be. And I hope that these turn into international seminars. I hope that these turn into conversations with people 30, 40, 50, 100 times more intelligent than me, because I want to do this to learn, but I want to share so that you can grow. And that process and that journey is there so that we can take action and that we can change the world, because we're heading into an environment now where greed is something that has a bad taste within the face of the earth. You can see it everywhere you look. Mismanagement, because people are trying to hold on to things that they probably should have let go of to try and make room for something new, because things are going to get better. If you still used a Nokia 918 or whatever they were called back in the 90s, and you still got that phone now, it's going to make your life a lot harder to try and keep up than if you threw that out and upgraded to something new. So what are the things in your life that you should probably let go of to try and upgrade? What action are you needing to take? Why are you not taking it? And then from there, what is a process or a realistic time frame that you could do? So I hope that this finds you well, and I appreciate you guys tuning in.